The immense chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with tension. Representatives of over 200 intergalactic civilizations had gathered in the Great Circular Hall, many of whom had traveled for weeks to attend this emergency meeting. The central platform stood empty, awaiting the arrival of the senior advisors. What was this? Asilith, a reptilian diplomat from the Outer Rim. His scaly skin reflected the blue light from above. His companion, a crystalline being named Helix, vibrated slightly in response. They were on another mission. The intelligent species seemed concerned. Before they could continue, the lights in the hall dimmed and a tall, slender figure glided onto the central platform. High Advisor Bear, with 6 spindly limbs and iridescent skin, immediately commanded silence. Esteemed delegates. She had called this emergency meeting to discuss a new species discovered on the 3rd planet of the yellow star in the Orion spiral. They call themselves human. A holographic image appeared above her head. A blue and green world with swirling white clouds. Their technology. Though primitive by our standards, our observers have recorded behavior requiring extreme caution. The Council recommends classifying them as a protected species under non-interference protocols. Whispers spread throughout the room. Protected status is rare. A large figure named Rose from the Verax section appeared. He was Admiral Krant, military commander of the expanding Verax Empire. His armored exoskeleton clicked into place as he rose to his feet. A respected advisor. What threat could a pre-FTL species pose to an advanced civilization? Vila waved her right hand. There was an ancient being. Elder Mach stepped forward, belonging to one of the first species to achieve space travel. His species had seen countless civilizations rise and fall over millennia. Humans possess traits we rarely encounter, Mach said, his voice husky with age. They do not surrender when threatened. They do not accept defeat. They wait. They plan. They remember. The elder tapped a control, and the hologram switched to scenes from history. Small bands of warriors defeating larger forces, resistance movements surviving overwhelming odds, and isolated groups enduring extreme conditions. Unlike most species, humans are capable of continuing conflict across generations. They pass their grievances on to their children and grandchildren. We have seen human descendants avenge injustices perpetrated against ancestors they never met. Admiral Krant made a harsh, metallic noise through his translator. Primitive tribal behavior. Nothing that advanced weaponry cannot overcome. And there is more, Vera continued. Humans adapt with extraordinary speed. Their scientific development has accelerated dramatically over the past century. Their minds are particularly suited and capable for war. The hologram, showing that almost anything can be turned into a weapon, displayed the history of humanity, from stone tools to nuclear weapons, an advancement that would have taken other species 5 times longer to develop than coral. A senior Verax diplomat, sitting behind Admiral Krant, leaned forward with interest. Unlike most of his kind, he specialized in copsies. Something about these humans piqued his professional curiosity. Senior Advisor Krant interrupted Verax. We have conquered 17 star systems. With each one, hive minds, silicon-based life forms, and even energy beings have fallen. These humans will not change in the face of our power, Elder Mach said quietly. It is this attitude that makes them so dangerous. They appear weak, but they will appear weak until they are not. By the time you realize your mistake, they will have already begun their counterattack. Debate raged in the chamber. Many older civilizations supported protected status, but expanding empires like Vala opposed unnecessary restrictions. Coral watched as Krant became increasingly negative. The Admiral was ambitious, always seeking new conquests to advance. Emperor Dora's position would be an easy victory in Krant's mind. The primitives were unable to defend themselves against Verax technology after hours of debate, and Villa called for order. The Council's recommendations stand. Earth will be classified as a protected area with no interference allowed. Our analysis suggests that humanity will achieve faster-than-light capabilities within 100 years. We will give them a proper welcome when they reach the stars on their own terms. With the session concluded, Coral approached the data terminal and downloaded all available information on humanity. Elder Mox's warning echoed in his mind between official meetings, and he studied the files with growing concern. Humanity is divided and vulnerable to attack, yet displays remarkable unity when threatened. Their history is soaked in blood, but also marked by incredible acts of mercy. They create breathtakingly beautiful art and use that same creativity to design ever more effective weaponry. Most disturbing was their reaction to attack. Unlike more rational species, who calculate the cost of continued resistance, humans fought most fiercely when victory seemed impossible. A few cycles later, Coral stood at attention in the Emperor's chambers aboard the Imperial flagship. Admiral Krant was announcing a plan he called the Terran demonstration. Great Emperor Krant said this backwater world, with its gleaming polished exoskeleton, was the perfect opportunity to remind the Council of Verax supremacy. Their protected designation was meaningless without enforcement. The Emperor Doctor wore armor more elaborate than the other Verax. Emperor Krant clacked his mandibles, defying the Council's warning. It was hyperbole. Your Majesty, our intelligence indicates that humanity is divided into approximately 200 polities with incompatible weapon systems and limited space capabilities. They have never faced a unified external threat. Coral broke protocol and asked, Your Majesty, if you will, before Warren further explores the Council's concerns about human psychology, are you suggesting that Verax should fear a primitive people who have only just reached their moon? Slicing through his twitching secondary arm, Emperor Draz raised one massive claw to silence them both. He stared for a long moment at the holographic display showing the distribution of Earth's defenses, population centers, and resources. He finally declared a simple conquest: demonstrate our power to these humans, control their planet, and exploit their resources. The Council would protest, and then, as always, accept the new reality. Coral felt a chill run through his body. The parameters of the conquest, my Emperor's standard procedure, a demonstration attack on key population centers, followed by the landing of troops at strategic locations. Admiral. Krant expected the planet's complete submission within one standard cycle. Krant clicked approvingly. We will depart immediately, Your Majesty. 30 ships will be enough. As Coral left the room, she thought back on all she had learned about the humans. A historical adage spoken by a human military leader repeated itself in her head. Sometimes once is not enough to win. The Verax never had to fight any species twice. Their technological superiority always guaranteed victory. However, when Massad's Verax fleet, Terra Coral couldn't shake the feeling that they were making a terrible mistake. The Council's warnings echoed in his mind. Do not attack the humans. They will hunt you down forever. No one was listening. Massive Verax warships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, holes in the obsidian absorbing the sunlight instead of reflecting it. 30 warships, some 2 million in length, positioned themselves in strategic positions around Terra for 18 minutes. The warships remained silent, allowing the human detection systems to register their presence on Terra. Panic erupted, emergency sirens blaring. Military forces scrambled in cities around the world. Ridiculously small fighter jets flew at the alien ships. World leaders scrambled to secure positions. Civilians filled the streets, some fleeing, others standing in awe. In the White House Situation Room, phones were held up to capture the moment humanity made its first contact with extraterrestrial life. President Howard gripped the edge of the table. What choice did we have? Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Mason shook his head grimly. Mr. President, our most advanced weaponry would be like spit against that ship. The Security Council is holding an emergency meeting. The Secretary of State reports that Russia and China are on heightened alert. Everyone waits to hear what these visitors want. The answer came seconds later. The same image appeared simultaneously on every phone and display device on every screen on Earth: Verax and Earthlings in full combat armor. The translation appeared as text below the alien's face. I am Admiral Krant of the Verax Empire. Your planet is now under our protection and authority. Resistance will be subject to appropriate corrective action. Obedience will be rewarded. You have 1 hour to inform the leaders of your surrender. President Howard's face hardened and he lost his direct line to the orbital ship's diplomats. Coral received a communication request. Admiral, the humans wish to speak. Krant predictably tapped his chin in amusement. Aloud. Coral opened the channel and watched as the human leader appeared on the screen. The beam was weak, no natural armor or weaponry visible. This is President Howard of the United States. I request peaceful negotiations before any further action is taken. The United Nations. The representatives tiptoe around, saying your time would be better spent preparing. You surrender, Krant interrupted. We have studied your world. You have nothing to harm our ships. We do not seek conflict, Howard replied. But if attacked, we will defend ourselves. Krant turned to Coral. They really do not understand their situation. We will begin the demonstration attack in exactly 50 minutes. Once the communication is over, we will target military installations first, then government facilities. Coral approached Krant personally. Admiral, the Council has specifically warned you. Perhaps the Council's involvement with humans is due to their irrational fear of primitives. Today they will realize the folly of their caution. At a U.S. Air Force base in Nevada, Commander Jack Miller, a decorated pilot with 15 years of combat experience, was quickly reassigned to lead a special reaction force. Commander, we have orders to launch everything we have, the communications officer reported. Miller shook his head. These ships will attack our fighters like flies, he studied. Tactical display, idea forming, commanding squadron to hold position, needing to make a call. A few minutes later, he was connected to Dr. Alyssa Thompson of NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. We need to know if there's a pattern to the energy signature of the alien spacecraft. Indeed, yes, she replied excitedly. Despite the circumstances, they're emitting regular pulses across multiple frequencies. We believe it's their communications system, and if we were to match our frequencies with their transmissions, there could be interference or worse, she said. Transmitting data now. Miller directed his team at a new plan. Instead of fighting them head-on, we're going to screw them over their heads. Exactly 50 minutes after the ultimatum, the Vela fleet deployed over capital cities like Washington, D.C., Moscow, and Beijing. Weapons systems fired up, glowing with ominous blue energy. Krant stood on the command deck, satisfied, folded his weapons, and launched the main demonstration attack. The first shell never fired. Instead, a barrage of missiles was launched from bases around the world. It was aimed directly at the Verax ship. It was programmed to explode in space around it, releasing an electromagnetic pulse tuned to precisely match the Verax's frequency. Blinking was visible on the Crunch ship's communication systems. Coordination between the ships had failed, and the targeting computer had reset. Crunch's exoskeleton clicked excitedly, wondering what was happening. Coral checked the diagnostic systems. The humans were somehow disrupting our networks. They were using our communications frequencies against us. It was impossible. There was no way they could analyze it. The response was very swift, but the evidence was clear. The confusion did not last long, but in that short time it was enough to delay the attack. Commander Miller led 3 squadrons of fighters in a bold move. Rather than attack directly, they performed complex patterns to further confuse the Verax sensors, giving the impression of a much larger force admiral. Tactical officers reported detecting hundreds of small ships approaching. Krant, frustrated, announced that they would destroy them all. Verax weapons. They finally opened fire, but their targeting systems were compromised, and many of their shots missed. Terran fighters weaved through the barrier, some inevitably falling to superior firepower, but others got close enough to fire specialized warheads directly at the ship's sensor arrays. One Verax destroyer's systems were more affected than the others, causing it to fall out of formation. Miller aimed his remaining fighters at the ship, concentrating fire on what appeared to be its external cooling systems. Parts of the destroyer's hulls began to glow red, and an internal explosion occurred. In his command ship, Krant watched in disbelief as one of his ships tilted sideways, dragging wreckage behind it. "That's impossible," he whispered. Coral felt a chill run down her spine, certain that the Council had warned her. Admiral Krant turned to him, anger evident in his posture. This would change nothing. Commence planetary bombardment immediately. All ships, all targets. Over the next few hours, Earth was devastated. VRA weapons destroyed major cities. Millions had lost their lives in the initial attack, but the human resistance continued to adapt with astonishing speed in their underground bunkers, rushing. Humanity's leaders, who had established a command center, gathered their ancient enemies and set aside their differences in the face of extinction. "We need time," Dr. Thompson explained to a room of military commanders from 12 nations. "We've analyzed the remains of the damaged ship. There are vulnerabilities in their technology that we can exploit, but we need more data." Commander Miller's flight suit was barely scorched. Commander Miller stepped forward and seized the data. "Doctor, if we strike them once, we can strike them again," the Russian general. He nodded grimly. They were deploying submarines beneath their landing force. Chinese hackers had already probed their systems and were hoping we would surrender. President Howard looked at a map showing Verax's landing zone and said they didn't understand what they had started. As dawn broke, the world changed forever, and resistance cells began to form. Civilians became soldiers, scientists became weapons designers. Vera had calculated that humanity would collapse upon the first use of force, but her calculations in orbit were wrong. He reviewed the day's reports, growing increasingly anxious. Humanity had lost millions, but they had damaged a Farah destroyer, something no species had managed during first contact. Even more worrying, they showed no signs of surrendering. Instead, they were adapting, learning, and organizing. The Council's warnings replayed in his head. They will hunt you down forever. The hunt had only just begun, 6 months into the occupation of Terra. Admiral Krant paced the command deck of his flagship, his armored exoskeleton clicking with each excited step on the holographic display. Around him, planets refused to submit. Another supply convoy was lost. He demanded, his jaw clicking with rage. The tactical officer's posture clearly indicated his displeasure. Yes, the admiral had been ambushed in a region called Montana. 17 convoys had gathered there this month alone. Krant slammed a clawed appendage into the console. What should have been a simple conquest had become a war of attrition. The humans employed tactics that defied conventional military logic. They struck from the shadows, disappeared into the wilderness, and operated in mind-numbingly small cells. Commander Zelkrant's whereabouts had been difficult to track, and he had requested the patrol return 6 hours ago. Another officer reported losing contact. Coral quietly observed from his seat. The diplomat had been reassigned to intelligence analysis after his earlier warnings had proven eerily accurate. He had spent months studying human resistance patterns and had found ingenuity both impressive and frightening. Admiral Coral cautiously suggested that they might consider a strategic retreat to the orbital medic. The ground battle was exhausting. Our resources are depleting at an unsustainable rate. CR's head turned towards him. They retreated, acknowledging Emperor Draz that the primitives had armed themselves with chemical-propelled weaponry and forced the mighty Verax to retreat. Humanity is not fighting conventionally. Coral explained that they have adapted their tactics to target our weaknesses, targeting our communications relays, avoiding direct confrontation, and only attacking when they have the advantage. Before Krant could respond, the ship's alarms blared. The main screen showed a Verax patrol ship sending out an emergency signal, then suddenly went silent. Krant's location. This week, near the Arctic Circle, the third outpost was shrouded in darkness in an abandoned mine shaft beneath the Canadian Rockies. Commander Jack Miller watched as his team unloaded equipment from a captured Belak scout ship. The vessel was smaller than their capital ship, but still packed with centuries of technology. Dr. Thompson warned they would need it. The attacks of the past 6 months had transformed Miller from fighter pilot to resistance leader. He had a jagged scar running from his left eye to his right. His jaw was a souvenir from a close encounter with a Verax patrol. His once shiny uniforms had been replaced with utilitarian combat gear cobbled together from military munitions and civilian clothing. His first officer, former Navy SEAL Lisa Chen, had secured the ship's weapon systems. "I think the doc can figure this out," Miller nodded. "If anyone can, it's Thompson. She's already reverse-engineered 3 of their communications devices." The scout ship had been captured through a combination of ingenuity and desperation. Miller's team had studied the Verax patrol's patterns. They identified a vessel with a skeleton crew and used a reprogrammed Verax communications device to send false orders, luring it into a trap when it landed to investigate the false distress signal. An electromagnetic pulse bombardment disabled the system, giving Miller's team enough time to board the vessel. The 4 Verax crew members put up a fierce resistance, but were cut down by concentrated fire aimed at the exhaust pipe joints. A weakness discovered through bitter experience was that the vessel was hidden deep within the mines. Miller ordered it to move. Tonight, the research facility is 500 miles south, at the site of a former university physics lab. Dr. Alyssa Thompson hasn't slept in nearly 48 hours. Her workspace is cluttered with disassembled alien technology, handwritten equations, and empty coffee cups. Once a respected math scientist, Thompson now leads technology adaptation at Verax, Earth's most important research division. Her team has grown to hundreds of scientists working in hidden facilities around the world. Everyone shares data through secure channels developed after Verax destroyed the conventional facilities. "I think we've got the communications infrastructure figured out," she announced, adjusting the final connections to the device before her. Her assistant, Dr. Patel, looked up from her workstation. Communications Interceptor Thompson nodded, pushing back a strand of gray hair from his face. The Verax use quantum entanglement to make ship-to-ship communications completely secure, they thought, but for ground forces they use a secondary system similar in principle to our radio waves, only far more advanced. She quickly activated the device. The lab's speaker was. The Verax's clicking was translated after a few minutes by an algorithm her team had developed. Patrol 739 headed for Sector 4. Resistance activity had been reported near a human settlement. Denver Thompson smiled, a rare sight. Now we can intercept any orders they send to their ground forces, and if we can intercept them, we can send false orders, Pell finished. His eyes widened at the exact meaning. He put Miller on a secure line. The Resistance had acquired a new weapon for the Verax command ship. Coral received the encrypted transmission. From the Galactic Council, he maintained secret communications with his council contacts. He was disobeying direct orders from Emperor Draz. Such actions would be considered treason. But Coral was beginning to believe that Operation Verax on Earth was doomed to failure. The message was brief. The Council is monitoring the situation. Human resistance has exceeded all predictive models, and we recommend immediate withdrawal before the situation worsens. Coral committed it to memory, then deleted the message. He was compiling an extensive report on human adaptation. Ability to record how they learned from each encounter, how they adapted Vara technology for their own uses, and how they formed a reunited alliance network. When their leaders were killed, it was their scientific progress that was of greatest concern. Human researchers were beginning to understand Vara technology with astonishing speed. What had taken other conquered races decades to understand, the humans were mastering in months. When he reported these findings to Admiral Kratt, the response was one of despairing denial. They had lost their major city. "Their government is broken, and we cannot win with respect," Admiral Coral replied. "They don't need to win, we just need to lose in Mars orbit." The Vera supply base lost power without warning. A security team was sent to investigate and found the facility. The Vera crew was dead and critical parts were missing. The attack method did not match known resistance patterns. 2 days later, a Verax communications satellite exploded as a makeshift human spacecraft approached. The spacecraft appeared to be made from Verax parts and human technology, a hybrid that should not have been. This was impossible given Earth's technological limitations. Admiral Krant requested reinforcements from the world of Veraxcom. Emperor Draz's response was to control the situation with the allocated resources. Failure reflected poor leadership, not a lack of forces. Meanwhile, beneath the surface of the conflict, something unprecedented was happening. Dr. Thompson's team, working with salvage Verax propulsion systems, made a breakthrough in a hidden facility beneath the Antarctic ice. The first human-built spaceship incorporating alien technology was constructed within a vast cavern and nearing completion. Excavated as a climate research station before the invasion, the ship represented humanity's first step out of its besieged world. Commander Miller walked the length of the ship, marveling at what human resolve had accomplished. "Does it fly?" he asked Thompson, who was adjusting the navigation systems. "Better than flying," she replied without looking up. "My calculations suggest it should be possible to travel faster than light." Miller stared at her. "That's impossible. There's no way we could have mastered the technology so quickly." Thompson finally turned to him. Fatigue and excitement were evident on her face. Verax had made a grave mistake. "Commander, they thought destroying the city would destroy us. Instead, they allowed the surviving scientists, engineers, and problem solvers on Earth to focus on one problem, their own." She pointed to the ship we called the Vengeance. Miller realized the tides were not just turning on Earth. Humanity was preparing to take to the stars, and the hunt was about to begin. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter was once home to 3 Verax mining stations, but now only ruins remain. Admiral Krant reviewed the footage once more. His jaw clacked in unease. The attack had been precise and devastating. He had called for 7 ships, the tactical officer admiral replied, smaller than our cruisers but faster. They would emerge from behind a large asteroid, first disabling our communications, then targeting our life support systems. The CR's armored exoskeleton creaked. He leaned forward. There were no survivors among the mining crew. Admiral, humanity has made off with all useful equipment, materials, and all data storage units. A year has passed since the initial invasion of Earth. What should have been recorded as a glorious conquest for the Verax Empire has become a military disaster that threatens Kant's career and life. Emperor Draz has stopped responding to his status reports, an ominous sign. Coral approaches with a data tablet. Admiral, we have analyzed the design of the ship used in the asteroid belt attack. The display showed a ship of obvious hybrid construction. Verax technology had fused with human engineering, blending in ways that were impossible. How were they progressing so quickly? Grant Hist explained that they had reverse-engineered our technology and adapted it to their needs. Coral explained that they weren't simply copying, but innovating, finding uses for it that we hadn't even thought of. The Admiral turned away, refusing to accept the implication that they were still trapped within this solar system. We control the hyperspace routes. They can't threaten the wider Imperium. Coral hesitated. Before you speak, there's something else. Admiral, our long-range sensors have detected an energy signature indicating a hyperspace window opening near the edge of this system. 3 days ago, Krant froze. They couldn't have mastered hyperspace technology that quickly. The evidence suggests otherwise, Coral said quietly. I believe they have left the solar system. The bridge of the Vengeance was buzzing with activity. The locations of nearby star systems, once theoretical knowledge, were now. The voyage's reality. Humanity had reached the stars but emerged not as peaceful explorers but as hunters. A complete systems scan was announced by Lisa Cheng from the tactical station. No Verax signals were detected. Miller nodded and exited hyperspace, beginning a standard approach to the 3rd planet. The Vengeance was Earth's first starship, but it was no longer the only one to return home. Dr. Thompson oversaw the construction of over 20 ships, each with improvements based on the data returned by Miller's crew. The ship exited hyperspace, its hybrid engines gleaming. Aid, a planet with blue energy, was a habitable planet that, according to stolen Verax records, served as a small supply depot for the Empire. Miller questioned several species, and Dr. Rivera of the Science Department matched a trading post listed in the Verax database and reported the presence of a small Verax military force, perhaps as many as 30 soldiers. Miller considered his options. The Earth government in exile, operating from a hidden bunker, was obviously intent on establishing contact with other species that might oppose Verax, but was also authorized to attack Verax targets. We'll launch them into orbit when the opportunity arises, he decided, and prepared a transmission in standard Galactic Council format for the Galactic Council chambers. The elders watched the emergency meeting with grim satisfaction. On the great displays, we saw images of human starships attacking VRA outposts across 3 star systems, just as we had predicted. We told the assembled delegates that not only had humanity survived the Verax invasion, but that it had now taken the conflict beyond its home system. High Counselor Vila's face was grave, and we had warned the Veraxian Empire. There's a reason for the non-interference protocol. Rose, a representative from a star system near Verax space, stated that the humans contacted us directly. They claim they do not seek conflict with non-space races, only fighting those who attack their world. Limited Vengeance Mox nodded, consistent with their historical pattern. Another counselor, representing the mining collective, spoke up. The humans are offering technology exchanges with non-space systems. They are developing hybrid systems that even our engineers can understand. A murmur of innovation spread throughout the room. What the humans have accomplished in a single attempt is impossible. Standard years were difficult to process. And while most species took decades to adapt to alien technology, humanity did it in months. And what was Verax's reaction? V asked. Council intelligence reported that Emperor Draz had declared maximum mobilization, but reports suggested growing internal problems. Some Verax colony worlds were questioning the wisdom of continuing hostilities with Earth. Mox's ancient eye narrowed. The Vala never expected to fight outside of Earth. They never imagined the humans would bring war to a Verax colony. On a world 16 light-years from Earth, Governor Traz woke to an alarm. An orbital defense station exploded, lighting the night sky with fire. 6 human ships descended through the atmosphere, their weapons striking military installations with surgical precision within hours. The limited Verax military presence was eliminated, and the governor faced a human delegation in his command center. The human leader, a woman with dark skin and piercing eyes, spoke through a translator. I am Admiral Harpers. This Earth Defense Force colony is now under our control. You cannot hold the Aura world, the governor protested. The Emperor will be dispatched. He is currently dealing with simultaneous attacks on 6 other colonies. Harper interjected. We have no interest in your civilians. Our conflict is with your military and your leaders. She placed a data device on the table. These are our terms. This colony will cease all support for the Verax military. In return, we will leave your civilian infrastructure intact and provide defense against Verax retaliation. Governor TR stared. I can't believe this. You're asking me to rebel. I suggest you survive, Harper corrected. Verax attacked our world without provocation. We're simply fighting back in kind. After the governor reluctantly agreed to the terms, Harper returned to the ship. Her aide-de-camp, a former UN diplomat, looked troubled. Something's wrong, Marcus asked. We're getting good at this, he replied, almost too good. When does legitimate defense become conquest? Harper looked out the viewport at the Verax colony below. Strict protocol. We're not here to build an empire. We're here to dismantle the empire that attacked us. Dr. Thompson stood before the leaders of Earth's United Resistance, organized only as the Earth Defense Council. A basement in the Rocky Mountains had served as humanity's de facto capital since the major cities had been destroyed. The hyperspace network was key, she explained, pointing to a holographic map with glowing lines connecting star systems. The Verax controlled key junction points, and that was how they maintained their empire. If we could capture or disable these junctions, we could effectively. President Howard, who divided the territory into isolated sectors, was one of the few world leaders to survive the initial attack. Studying the map, I found your team has not only mastered their hyperspace technology, but has mastered it, Thompson replied. Professional pride has been improved. Our new ships can create temporary hyperspace windows without relying on existing networks. The Verax cannot do that. General Chen of the Chinese military leaned forward. How is this possible? We were a pre-space civilization a year ago. Thompson's expression hardened. Necessity and focus. When the Vala destroyed our cities, they removed all distractions. Earth's best minds are working on one problem: how to defeat the Verax. There are no budgetary constraints, competing priorities, or bureaucratic obstacles. She points to the star chart. We have made contact with 7 non-Vela civilizations, and they are providing additional technological assistance. Many have been forced into the Verax Empire and see us as potential liberators. President Howard nodded slowly. Commander Miller's latest report states that the Vala are gaining ground. Returning to defend their core worlds, they never expected to fight a multi-nation war. They thought they were hunting primitives, Thompson said, unaware they were creating hunters. The hyperspace map of the universe flashed as new data arrived. Human ships had appeared in a star system just 3 light-years away from the Verax home world. The hunt was accelerating. 10 years after the Verax invasion of Earth, the galactic landscape had changed beyond recognition, and the once mighty Verax Empire had shrunk to a mere fraction of its size. Where their warships once inspired fear, their former territories now sailed in formation, patrolling the shadows among the stars. Admiral Jack Miller, his hair now graying, stood on the observation deck of the EDF. His flagship, nearly a mile long, represented the pinnacle of human military engineering, a blend of reverse-engineered Verax technology and innovative human design. Behind him stood a fleet of 300 ships, ready for what may be the final act of the war. The Admiral. Miller nodded as the enforcer approached the Galactic Council representatives. The delegation, led by High Advisor Vila, entered. The slender alien gazed at Miller with a complex expression, a mixture of respect and trepidation. "Admiral Miller," she began, "the Council appreciates your willingness to meet with us before the planned operation. 10 years ago, the Council warned Verax not to attack Earth." Miller replied, her voice carrying the weight of harsh experience. "They should have listened." The elder Mox was now supported by a floating transport system. "You have made progress, and now the galaxy has witnessed your species accomplish in 10 years what other races have failed to achieve in centuries." The observation window showed a staging area where ships from 12 previously conquered worlds had joined the human fleet. "Earth has found allies among the peoples who suffered under Verax rule. We have come to discuss terms," Vel continued. "Emperor Draz has finally agreed to open diplomatic channels." After 10 years of war and billions of human deaths, Miller's expression hardened. Now Mox spoke quietly of an alternative. The question hung in the air as to whether the complete destruction of Verax as a civilization was the genocide humanity sought. Miller gazed out at the stars, remembering the burning cities of Earth, the refugee camps, the years of desperate resistance. He said that justice, not extermination, must finally be served on the Verax homeland. World Emperor Draz faced the Imperial Council in the ancient chambers of his ancestors, decorated with the spoils of worlds once conquered. The walls now. Symbols of Verax dominance were systematically destroyed by human strike teams, and the humans agreed to negotiate. D's once commanding voice was now muted, his exoskeleton once gleaming with decorative elements now showing his position as functional, and the battle-scarred Admiral Krant, who had somehow survived despite the catastrophic failure on Terra, nervously clicked his jaw. Could they be trusted to honor any agreement? They had been ruthless in their campaigns, and the elderly Verax rose. His seat, Governor Coral, has gained attention in recent years as one of the few officials to accurately assess the human threat from the outset. He currently serves as chairman of the Emergency Governing Committee, formed after human attacks destabilized the traditional imperial structure. The humans were not genocidal, but deliberate. Coral noted that they destroyed our military and leadership structures, but notably avoided mass civilian casualties. When offered surrender, they accepted. Another advisor who was slowly dismantling our empire complained about an empire built on the conquest of other nations. Coral replied that they were simply more efficient at it than we were. The emperor shook his jaw in frustration. The terms they were offering were humiliating: complete disarmament, reparations to Earth and other planets. We had conquered humanity, a monitoring committee to monitor compliance or extermination. Coral stated bluntly, their latest ships could attack any part of our territory without warning. Our remaining military would be powerless to stop them. The emperor's stance was clear. For a species that for millennia had known only expansion and victory, the past decade of defeat was incomprehensible. Humanity had not simply fought back. It had systematically uncovered the root of Verax power. How had we so miscalculated? Draz asked quietly. Coral activated a display that showed what the first Galactic Council had warned about humanity. Even when threatened, we ignored their most defining characteristic. Even in defeat, they do not surrender. They do not accept, they wait, they plan, and they remember. In a secure conference room aboard the Resilience, Dr. Lisa Thompson, Earth's head of advanced technology, reviewed the final peace terms that oversaw humanity's transition from planetary to interstellar civilization. The terms, she told Miller, would prevent them from threatening anyone again. Their military technology would be limited to defensive capabilities only. Miller nodded as he examined the documents and the reparations. The reparations were substantial, but focused on reconstruction rather than punishment. Their mining colony would provide resources for the rebuilding of Earth. The city's doors swung open, and President Taylor, its third since the war began, was inaugurated. With the immediate threat gone, Earth's government stabilized, but the scars of the invasion were still visible from orbit. The Council approved our terms with minor modifications. Taylor announced that Earth had been formally invited to become a full member of the Galactic Council. Miller raised his eyebrows earlier than expected, but that wasn't the case. Thompson gave a thin smile and said we had demonstrated our ability to intimidate them. They would rather have us within their system than operate independently. President Taylor surveyed the assembled fleet. "Is this show of force absolutely necessary to the peace negotiations?" asked Miller without hesitation. "The Verax only value necessary force. You must understand that accepting these terms is not a choice, but the only way to survive as a species." The signing ceremony took place on a space station orbiting a gas giant in a neutral zone, an uninhabited star system. Emperor Draz and his delegation arrived first, followed by Earth and Galactic representatives. Dora's posture expressed surprise as Miller, a council observer, entered the room. "Are you the pilot who damaged our destroyer in the first attack?" Miller nodded. "Commander Miller, Admiral, you have been pursuing us across the stars for 10 years, the doctor said in a translated voice, something like respect. "We warned you," Miller replied simply. As the formal proceedings began, Coral approached Miller personally. "I tried to prevent this war," Verax admitted. "I studied your species and understood things others do not. And you are wiser than most," Miller admitted. "Your species fights differently. Coral observed that most species wage war for territory and resources. You fought for the memory of those you lost." Miller looked to the peak, thinking, "We fought because you gave us no choice. We will remember that when we rebuild after the treaty is signed." High Advisor Villa addressed the assembled representatives. "Let this day not only be an end to this conflict, but a lesson to all civilizations. Protocols exist to prevent tragedies like these. The elders who had warned us about human capabilities so many years ago scoffed." He formulates his own thoughts into what we today know as the precepts of humanity. Never underestimate any species, respect all sentient life, and remember that conquest creates enemies, not subjects. A month later, Miller stood on a hill overlooking the rebuilding of Washington. D.C. earth-moving machines cleared the rubble of the old city, and new buildings rose from the ruins. The skyline would never be the same, but it would exist again. Dr. Thompson joined him, carrying a data tablet. "The last Verax warship was decommissioned under the Council's watch, and our fleet," Miller asked. "Shifting to exploration and defense," she answered. "We maintain our advanced capabilities, but the galaxy has noticed us." Below them, a school group toured a memorial commemorating those who died in the first attack. Children were born during war. Peace was a new concept to them. Was it worth it? Miller asked quietly. All this death and destruction. Thompson considered the question carefully. "We did not choose this war, but rather a way to end it with justice and a new beginning, not annihilation." A diplomatic shuttle appeared. Overhead, they headed toward the new Galactic Council embassy. Earth was no longer an isolated world, but a respected force among the stars. The cost was unimaginably high, but humanity emerged stronger, more united, and with technology that would have taken centuries to develop. Vers had learned his lesson. Looking at the children at the monument, Miller said, "I hope we have learned our lesson, too." Thompson nodded. "We already teach it, peace through strength, justice through restraint." As they turned to leave, Miller glanced back at the monument one more time. It was the Galactic Council's warning to Verax. It was written in stone, "Attack no humans or they will hunt you forever." It was prophetic, but not inevitable. The hunt was over, and the long work of building a future where such warnings would never be needed again began.